Hello, everyone. If you've never joined me before, my name is James, so hello. And today I'm just going to chat a little bit about triggers. Um, and I'm sure you hear that phrase a lot. I know it's become really popular. You hear people talking about how they were triggered by something, or you see trigger warnings on Facebook posts, trigger warnings on Twitter, whatever social media. I'm sure you've heard the phrase. Some of you might not know what it means. Some of you might make up things that you think it means. And what a trigger is, it is something that causes an emotional response. Um, Whether it be a story about some childhood trauma that you suffered, it's going to, if you haven't dealt with that trauma completely, it's going to cause you to think about that. It's going to bring back all of those feelings of, you know, hurt, pain, guilt, shame, insecurity. Um, it's going to bring those all to the surface. And sometimes that can cause panic attacks because you were not prepared to deal with those emotions at that time that you were triggered. Um, and I, while I can't say that it's not a good idea to put trigger warnings up, because it is. It's a good idea, especially if you know you have some friends that have gone through some traumas that are still lingering, or if you know someone in the military or had some other traumatic event, and they have PTSD. You definitely want to take their feelings into consideration. Absolutely. Um, but the thing with triggers is that you can work on those issues and get rid of those triggers. Um, when we do shadow work, we learn to recognize something that triggers us um, and take a step back. So when you start to have somebody says something that triggers you and it brings those emotions up, um, try to take a step back and ask yourself, okay, why did this trigger me? What am I feeling right now? Is it something that's hurting me in the present moment? Um, and it's probably not hurting you like physically. In reality, it's those emotions, and they can make you feel exactly the way you did the day that that trauma happened. So we need to start learning to work through that. And it's a constant thing. It's not an easy fix. It's something you have to keep working through because we all have unconscious triggers. We all have, buried fear, guilt, shame, whether it be traumas that happened when we were younger, something that happened, you know, part of our childhood development. One example is you know, crying. A lot of people are ashamed of crying and letting emotions out, and that is, usually due to someone telling them that that's not okay, that expressing those emotions are not okay. Um, Say you're a child and you lost your favorite toy and you start crying. If your parent yelled at you and told you to quit crying, quit being a baby, um, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. Those types of things are going to cause you to feel a connection with crying and shame. You're going to, in your brain, associate those things together, and in the future, you're not going to want to cry because you were taught that crying is bad and crying is not a productive or healthy feeling. Um, and that's not true at all. But when we get those reactions from people that we look up to and trust, that are supposed to, accept us and take care of us and shelter us, we take that to heart and we push those feelings down. We turn those sad feelings into shame and repress them. And the more we repress things, you know, the more it causes health issues, it causes mental issues. It manifests in so many different ways, and every person is different on how those repressed emotions show themselves. Um, let's say the same child had a parent who let the child cry and held the child and didn't necessarily try to solve anything, but just let the child have their feelings and cry for a few minutes. When the kid learns to trust them, learns that okay, crying is a healthy response, and they cried, they let it go, and they moved past that. And that's how we're supposed to deal with our emotions, because no emotion is bad per se, it just is. Um, there are some emotions that are denser and heavier than others, and they weigh us down. Um, and that's what gets triggered, is those emotions that we have repressed. So, I suggest to everyone, do shadow work. Do shadow work, do shadow work, do shadow work. And it doesn't get any easier. It just, you have to remain mindful. And when something happens, just ask yourself, okay, why is this triggering me? And detach yourself from those feelings. Look at it objectively. And, because once you can look at those emotions, without feeling those emotions, then you can learn to let it go. You have to just kind of take a step back, and that can be hard. So yeah, I suggest to anyone, especially if you have a lot of triggers, please do shadow work. Because yeah, trigger warnings on social media are great, but the world does not come with trigger warnings. The world is not going to be kind, and it's best if you can deal with those emotions and deal with those things that trigger you in the safety and comfort of your own home than be out in public and something trigger you and you go into a full-blown panic attack at a very inopportune time. Um, so I try to do your shadow work in a place where you feel calm and at peace, to deal with those emotions on your own terms. You're taking power over those emotions when you set those guidelines. You're like, okay, today I'm going to work on this, and I'm going to do it in the safety of my home. I'm not going to let myself get triggered out in public when I can't deal with these emotions. I'm going to do it on my own time, my own space. Take back that power, do your shadow work, and just keep doing it. Keep doing it. Something new is going to come up every day, and the more shadow work we do, the more light we let in ourselves, the more darkness is going to come. So we have to keep doing it. Keep doing it. It's it's a test. It's a journey. It's learning to love yourself. And that's hard. But once we get rid of the negative connotation of these emotions, fear, guilt, sadness, those aren't necessarily negative at all, and we need to quit labeling them as negative. They exist. Light things exist, darker things exist, and they're not good or bad. They just are. They just exist. When we change our way of thinking about them, we can change how we heal ourselves. All right. I'm going to start doing videos on shadow work, and you know, eventually probably going to be offering classes, either one-on-one or